Destiny. He said, why do people leave the left? I don't know what's worse, listening to that chick or listening to Destiny. January 6th. Does the left understand why people leave the left? I wonder.
To this like high standard of behavior, whatever, and the left does it. And then I realized, I don't think I've ever had this revelation before. This never clicked me on stream before. But I realized why, and the answer is really obvious. The answer is because this guy at my Jubilee debate.
The answer is because what? I can tell you in advance whether he, I mean, I don't know his answer, but the reason people leave the left is because you guys are cannibals. You're ideological cannibals. And the reason you're ideological cannibals is because you're relativists, and there's no absolute standard or anything beyond your own preferences that gives you any of your opinions about anything. So you have no rock or foundation of truth at all. You have no obligations or duties. You have no standard for ethics. You don't know where we're going, yet you use this word progressive, like progress means anything under your view. The reason people leave is because it's inevitable that one dogmatic position a leftist or a progressive retard holds is probably going to be different not only a week later, but certainly a year later. And so the problem, the reason you leave is because one year's progressive dogma becomes the next year's heresy. And you don't get that with Christianity. And I highly doubt in this little clip from Destiny, he's going to actually properly diagnose it. Why? Well, he's still going to diagnose it from a leftist brain, which is broken and retarded and primitive. An atheist brain, their thinking, their worldview is actually primitive.
He runs
Jimbob looks like a Dapper Dan man.
Debate league?
Well, I'm trying to change that. The bigger my shoulders get and the bigger my muscles get, the less dressed up I am. Every single shirt I have is gonna be a cutoff, and I'm gonna really lean into the name Jimbob. I think that's the major breakthrough I'm gonna have in my career. Because it's a mismatch, right? It's like, oh, look at him. He's kind of a hipster. His name is Jimbob. I was expecting overalls. Well, once I beef up, it's gonna all make sense. Cut off flannels, get my mullet back, pop out one of my front teeth.
Incubate debate for like high schoolers.
High schoolers.
And so he invited me on Saturday to sit, and basically I had 4 prompts and I would debate anybody.
That's great. Can you get
right wingers are this. So this James Fishback guy is like very much like a all-in Trump supporter, especially politics, where the
can you just get to the point?
Is very much okay. Politics. The right is very much concerned with politics. So politics is like, in my mind, politics.
I don't know what it is. Destiny has a guy in a wheelchair face. You know how there's Mormon face and there's midget head? We've developed a lot of different categories here at MadeByJimbob in the chat. But he has guy in a wheelchair head. You know what I mean? Like, they should have an app where it's like wheelchair or not. And you just look at their faces and you have to guess if they're in a wheelchair. If I didn't know him and didn't have any background knowledge of him, I'd be like, so when did it happen?
Politics is the acquisition of political power. If you are practicing politics in a democracy.
Thoughts on Sicilian independence movement? I'm not aware of that, and I'm, my namesake comes from Sicily, and I don't know.
You're trying to get people to vote for your guy, right? You want people to vote for your guy so that you can hold elected office, so that you can enforce what.
There has to be a tank top Jack Prot Jimbob at the end of this evolution.
Whatever policies, you think are right or good or the best for the country, right?
Erudite is probably practicing the jaw movements. Oh yeah, you know how he got these jaw movements, don't you?
And I said that the feeling that I have in the online communities is the left kind of practices something different than politics, where the goal isn't.
We're going to start calling you Jimbob? Yeah, that's going to be my next channel, Jimbob.
to get people to vote for somebody, they're doing something different. It looks like politics, and they say it's politics, but it's not politics. It's something different. If you want to be really mean about it, then some people on the right, maybe even Richard Hanania said this. One thing that I noticed...
Arrive at the point. Does he always take this long to talk or what? I don't watch him or care, but...
because my friend who is so original made the 4 millionth joke to me that people have made where they're like, oh, hey, well, if your shit gets like super, you can always just do a why I left the left thing and become a Christian and join the right. And then I'm kind of talking about this back and forth. And then this topic comes up of like, why? Like, why? Why are the right so forgiving of everything? Like, why is it that the right can, take people back or not hold people to this like high standard of behavior, whatever, and the left does it? And then I realized, I don't think I've ever had this revelation before. This never clicked me on stream before. But I realized why, and the answer is really obvious. The answer is because the right is not interested in purity testing. I think I was close before to understand this when I said, well, they do purity tests, but they purity test around voting for the candidate. The reason why the right doesn't purity test is because the goal of the right is to practice politics. All the right wants to do, fundamentally, is win elections. The left does not want to win elections, or at least the far left or the left online people. Their goal is not to win elections. Their goal is something different. I don't know what it is, but their goal is...
How do you know it's different if you don't know what it is, retard? What are you even talking about? I don't think this guy knows what he's talking about at all. I think he's literally just making shit up. Like he didn't even say anything right there. So the right does purity testing, and the purity testing is around voting, and their ultimate goal is to just win votes. Well, no, that's part of the right politically, because politics are centered around voting and policy. However, the ideology of the right is sort of fractured. You have a dissident right that James Lindsay likes to call the woke right that questions the Enlightenment presuppositions of constitutionalism and the rest, and it's very threatening to the other conservative right that's scared of it, who are classical liberals. He's totally off on this. He's missing the most obvious reason why leftism, progressivism, liberals end up cannibalizing and sending people away is because, like I said, going into this, they have dogmas that are changing. So you have a dogma, what's permissible, and then it changes, and then there's a sort of a micro boomer effect where the early adopter, the real liberal, the real progressive, they no longer, because of the Overton window, fit inside the strict definition of the new progressive, what it means to be progressive now. And these things change so fast with the left that they can't keep up, where the change for the right side is generally slower because it still has a sort of underpinning. It's undergirded by a traditional sentiment. Even if the traditional sentiment is tarnished and blemished with liberalism, classical liberalism, it's still there. It's still there. He's totally off on this. The purity, it's not the purity testing. It's that the purity, the definition of what's pure on the left changes. And what's pure on the right, the argument for the dissident right is filtering down and bringing back what that is. What are we conserving is the question. What are we trying to do here? What worldview is informing our policy making? That's why you're getting people debating inside the right and not even caring too much about the left anymore because, like Sun Tzu said, don't interfere when the enemy is destroying itself. The reason people leave the left is the same reason the left can't meme, is because they have no basis for truth that stands independent of trends. They have nothing to grab onto. This guy's so lost and delusional. This take is so awful. How did this guy get popular? Why is he famous? Add off $5. Hey, Jimbob, we have to free our people from this plague of degeneracy, one heart and mind at a time. As always, great streaming. God bless. God bless you. Thank you for that.
Something different. And I realize now, I think that is the answer to when you're wondering, like, why is the right so accepting of people who are coming from the left? You don't see people doing like why I left the right and why I joined the left.
Yeah, you never get that. You also never get a bunch of people leaving blue states and going to the red state, or the opposite. You never see the red state people leaving and be like, honey, we got to pack up. Things are getting crazy here. Let's go to the blue state. If they're right leaning. Like, you can use the same argument, the same summary, not argument, the same summary. Why is it you only see blue state people who are blue? They're blue ideologically and politically. They exact and deploy their policies. It ruins the state economically, socially. Everything about it is degenerate. It literally tears away at the fabric of decency and workability. And then they go, okay, well, it didn't work here. I'm going to move to this other state. It's really prime for, for my policies. And you go, you mean the policies that just ruined your state? And they're like, no, it didn't. We just didn't do it right. That's why you get progressives, gays, lesbians, blue-haired people moving to conservative areas. I'm living proof. I'm living it. I'm watching the influx of people moving out of these shitty leftist, progressive states, neighborhoods, cities, even within Colorado. And they're going, well, where should we go, honey? Where should we go with our dog? And they go to the conservative places. The same is true for people who leave a liberal mindset and they make this transition. Often they go to libertarianism. Most of you in the chat who've, let's say, if you ever, repent, if you ever went through a phase where you were a democratic liberal, socially liberal, you move away, you see how gross it is, and you start moving closer to the center. And then maybe some of them, I did this. I had a little rafty time in libertarianism, a little safety raft. He's so off on this. It's crazy. Beef Sleazy, $5. Hey, Jimbob, would you ever debate a Coomer Gremlin? Yeah, I mean, I would debate him on something.
Because the left isn't even accepting of those people. Once a Nazi, always a Nazi. Or once if you supported this guy ever, or you said this 15 years ago, we're never taking
Idaho's next. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, all of those places, they're already infiltrated with it's like the homesteading. That was the joke I made, that homesteading is a perfect microcosm of what largely happens at the cultural larger level, right? Where you have this sort of parody of right-wing, sort of back to the land, man on the land, family values. And it's just, homesteading turned into homosteading, right? And Owen Benjamin led the charge, by the way. Jason McGinney, $5. Listening to the Coomer Gremlin on 1.5 speed is a trip. It's like other people on... Yeah, he does talk very fast.
And it's like, well, why? And I think I understand now. It's because in their mind, the end goal is some sort of... I don't want to use the word purity because it's overused, but it's some sort of like social group that has to have like a set of beliefs in order for you to belong to it, to feel good about being in that group, and then you reinforce that. And you're like practicing some kind of like basically like a social club, which isn't necessarily bad. Like, you can have clubs and you can have groups and you can have popular groups and in-group, out-group preference and all that. That's fine. But when you call it politics, I think that's really bad.
What are you talking about? What else is politics, you retard? I'm totally fine with it. This is another problem with people on the right and the left, by the way. The people often that Andrew is debating and I'm going back and forth with on X and sometimes even on debates, they have this view that like, oh, it's totally fine to have an in-group preference for your community in town. Based. Oh, it's totally fine to have an in-group preference with your church and like your, this and that. Based. And you're like, what is policy? What is politics other than some effort for populism at whatever level you're talking? It's always you meeting with other people, trying to influence their trajectory and their vote within politics, taking up local positions or state level or federal level, and representing a worldview that is shared by a lot of different people that you agree with. And he's like, no, we have to separate this from the... We should. I totally understand that you have a little in-group preference, and you meet other people, and then you try to aggregate your worldview, and then try to impact politics. But just don't call that politics. That's literally politics.
Because they're
Where's the group preference in the Bible? One path. Nations, peoples.
not doing politics.
There's a distinction in the Bible of peoples. This would be a defense of voluntary segregation, even. Maintaining cultural norms, customs of a peoples and having them as a peoples. It's like the Japan phenomenon, where you don't want to be Japan, but you like the opportunity to go to Japan and have like legitimate sushi or whatever it is, you know. But you can't go to legitimate Japan if you hold a pluralistic view that you shouldn't have isolated, protected, in a sense, protected in-group preferences, ethnicities, peoples, nations, ways of life. That's what's so beautiful about orthodoxy, by the way, is that orthodoxy accounts for the differences in culture and doesn't say, okay, because everyone's orthodox, let's just blend all the cultures together. No, it makes an account for the cultural differences and doesn't make an effort to dilute them at all.
And so...
you just did a naturalistic fallacy. No, I didn't.
Something that I thought was interesting.
I made a descriptive claim. Naturalistic fallacy would say what we see in the world is what we ought to do. I didn't say that.
Something I used to complain about a lot is we're playing by two different sets of...
Where is nation equal ethnic? What do you mean? Where is it the case? I just told you. Japan, you couldn't separate nation from its ethnicity. If you swapped out all the Japanese people in Japan, kept all the buildings, and you swapped them out with Somalians, it wouldn't be Japan.
Of rules, and that's untenable. We can't have it so that the right is, you know, in the... I don't want to say in the...
Nation is not an ethnicity. Sometimes it is. I just told you. Japan is an ethnicity, and it's a nation. Now, would I say every nation is an ethnicity? No. I don't think you can't really make the case anymore, at least, that America is a specific ethnic country. You can make a past argument that it had a little twinkle in its eye, and there was a moment there where it could have been, but, you know, America is an infant in relation to other countries. So, no, of course there are countries where you can't separate the people from their culture, their heritage, their ethnicity, and the country itself. I just gave you an example. Japan. There was a black samurai. Are you retarded? You think that does anything to the position? There was a black samurai. Wow, dude, top tier. Jimbob, just saying thanks. You're welcome. You and Andrew brought me back to Christ. No Orthodox churches near me in the Netherlands. Only Baptist, Protestant, and Catholic. Oh, well, that's there's still a way to do it, Peter Van de Velde. I know someone who lives in Ecuador, and they only get a priest visit, in fact, once a month or once every 2 months to deliver the liturgy and the Eucharist. So, Peter, you could actually, it might be a long game, but if you knew you were staying where you're at and you weren't willing to move your location for orthodoxy, I think people should consider the importance of orthodoxy should be met with the willingness to move. But if you can't, for whatever reason, you can still establish a community where with enough people, and it doesn't take much, with enough people, you can actually get people, you can get a priest to actually visit, and you can participate in orthodoxy.
In the dirt, in the mud, they're playing a totally different game than what the left plays when it comes to politics.
But I would say move. I would just say do it. Just move. Make it happen.
And I'm talking mainstream left people now, like Democrats or whatever, in terms of being willing to break rules. But then I notice online, there's also, in terms of the alternative media spaces, they're also playing a different game. I think the right plays a morally abhorrent and disgusting game.
Oh, gosh. We're going to listen to what you have to say about morally abhorrent? I mean, the joke of this guy. dude organized his... Dude organized a moment where he blew a dude in like a gas station. We're going to listen to you about morally abhorrent?
When it comes to how they exercise power, I think they do it in an authoritarian manner.
All power is authoritarian. How could you exercise power if it's not authoritarian? Power itself is the exertion of force and the will of a group of people with guns. Wheelchair head.
And I think there's no place for it in the United States of America.
There's no place. Your concept of rights is completely and wholly dependent on authority, on some level of authoritarianism. The whole thing. Have you ever noticed that if I don't believe in human rights, I can't actually live a life consistent with not believing in human rights? Like, if I were to violate the concept of human rights, you notice how I can't do that? Wheelchair head?
America. But when it comes to how they exercise their social power, I think that the right actually exercises social power more effectively than the left does, because they exercise it for political ends and not social whatever ends, or not.
Those two are tied. Wait, how did this guy get famous? What is going on in this guy's brain? Does he have this much brain rot? Social power, political. How are you going to separate social from political, dude?
Like, I'm trying to use a bunch of negative words, but not for like popularity groups.
You don't know what the fuck you're saying. You don't know how you got famous. You don't know why you're in the position you're in. You don't even know what you believe in. You're like you're an improviser. You have no idea what's going on. Destiny doesn't get that a Christian majority group believes in redemption. Yeah, that's another part that I was going to comment on Walter Millen. He's like, I don't know why they're so forgiving.
And not for just like...
Honestly, in some cases, they're too forgiving. Have you seen the Tapusa female convention going on?
Empty virtue signaling that's not backed up by electoral consequences. Because I keep going back to thinking, I'm like, imagine if you're on the right and you really think that like the 2020 election was rigged. How are you still going out and voting in 2024? Like, these motherfuckers, they think that the whole world is against them, but they still show up at the polls and they still actually vote. What the fuck? So yeah, that all that to further my idea that I think that we do have to start being, and I already have been, I guess, and I'll continue to be. We need to be really brutal on cutting people out of the left that are not politically oriented in the political sphere. So
he just asked, why are people leaving the left? And he said in his opener that it's because the right does, the left has this purity culture, and the right has a purity culture, but they ultimately go for the political aspect to win elections. And the left is spurging about some level of purity, like, ethical piety signaling and moral piety signaling. And now he's saying, let's cut people out. And asking the question, why are people leaving the left, while saying we should cut people out of the left who aren't pure.
So like, if people want to...
It's hilarious.
Is
Bob Chats down? No, Bob Chats is up. You can still Bob Chat. We're considering other people for Virginia's position, and she keeps spurging and keeps talking to us, and she's basically begging at this point, which is pathetic.
If people want to be like activists or like social commentators or whatever online, like people like Hassan, I guess, then they can do that. That's fine. But we shouldn't confuse those people as being members of or representatives.
How can you describe the left without describing politics? Yeah, you can't describe a group of people who want something in the world, in the nation, and then pretend that that's going to be separated from their political view. It was like his clone, right? Not so erudited, or whatever her name is. Not so smart. She's all, well, no, I hold a Orthodox Protestant Christian view, but I just don't use it to vote or do anything in the world. What? This is a feature of like their worldview. This is all downstream from their worldview. Their worldview says that things can be separated, that there's neutrality. When you debate them, at least within philosophy, they're like, you ever notice they're like, even not so erudite when she was talking to Jay. She's talking about these claims, and then he brings up epistemology, and she's like, I don't understand what this ethical argument for feminism has to do with epistemology. They fundamentally think that things are in a vacuum, as if you can make a moral claim without assuming an epistemic claim, as if you could make a metaphysical claim without making a moral and epistemic claim, that these things are tied, especially from a Christian view. We are the view that can tie all of these things together and properly categorize them. They pretend that these are separate. They're like, you know what? On the right side, I totally understand you guys gathering together to create a populace that shares in-group preferences. And I just have a problem with you taking positions of government and then informing policy based on what your true convictions are. That's my problem. And of course a leftist would say that, but also people on the right say that. That's like a Ben Shapiro take. Well, I totally agree. I mean, I respect your religion, and we have freedom of religion here in this country. That's what makes it so beautiful, is the pluralism of incompatible cultures and ideologies. That's what makes America beautiful. The defense, the active defense of pluralism and incompatible worldviews. I mean, it's just beautiful. So I believe in your right to practice your religion. I believe in your right to do all sorts of things. You know, where I draw the line is your view impacting policy at a national level. That's too far. Oh, Ben Shapiro, you have a problem with a collection of an aggregate of people who have an identity influencing policy? Really?
Cool it with the anti-Semitic remarks.
Oh, you have a problem with a group identity influencing Congress, legislation, domestic foreign policy? You have a problem with that? Yeah, it's absolutely disgusting. Identity politics all the way down. It is absolutely. This is not what the Founding Fathers had in mind. Not really. Could the Founding Fathers have, predicted 1948? I don't know what you're saying. Oh, yeah, you do. Blah, 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 blah. I cannot hear it. I will not hear it. I will not actually hear it. Yeah.
It's of the Democratic Party, and we shouldn't confuse those people as our allies. They're not. And we shouldn't treat those people like they're...
$20 comes in from Payne Zombie Ghosting. He says, nothing is for the goal. Thank you so much for the goal. Did it for the sun.
Politically active. They're not.
Dave Portnoy, I might look at that. It's a little, obviously now that the streams, this is the advantage of the streams going members only or not going up at all. The real neutrals show up for my live streams. That's the real neutrals. If you guys don't know, neutral is another word I'm using for ma ends. But I saw the little Spurg. Maybe I'll look at that after. He's freaking out.
They're doing something fundamentally different. And I'm not saying that thing is bad.
Why does Ben Shapiro never debate people like Andrew? Well, I'm not big enough to debate Ben Shapiro. Andrew is now. Andrew is definitely in that world enough to get in front of Ben Shapiro. I think he will. I actually think that's going to happen.
There's room in a society for everybody. Well, not everybody, but there's room for like a whole bunch.
But they're going to force Andrew to wear a crucible yarmulke. You know what I mean? They're going to have Andrew come in to the Daily Wire, the little smoking lounge or whatever. And they're going to have a little drone that goes around, and then it's going to go around Andrew's head, and then he's going to have a yarmulke with a big red crucible logo on it, and everyone's going to scoff and be like, oh, no. I mean, that's the only condition Ben Shapiro would make. Be like, listen, I've seen all your stuff. I secretly watch it all and digest it. You're influencing my buddy Matt Walsh a little too much, so I wanted to step in and have a conversation with you. What'll it take for you to work for Mossad? Let's just skip to it. I love how you debate people. I really love what you're doing out there. Is there any way to co-opt you? I mean, is there anything I can put on the table for you? Dreidel, 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 made it out of clay.
A bunch of different types of behavior.
You sent Bob Chat to Vagine? Really? I think they were working, but I'll check it, Honest Diecast. I apologize. I'll check it out. I hope she didn't get fired already. Bagel, 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 made it out of dough. I salute you, good sir.
Activists of social, movements and groups that aren't necessary.
Well, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. I don't need to do that. I'm in a position to do what I want, when I want, how I want. I appreciate you inviting me over to the Daily Wire, but I'm not putting that fucking thing on my head. Not gonna do it. Not gonna kiss a wall. Not gonna put that thing on my head. Nice embroidery, though, gotta say. That is a nicely made Crucible yarmulke, I gotta say. But I'm not putting it on my head. You'll never get me.
Necessarily, maybe, like looking at political ends. Like, that's fine. That can exist. But we can't mix that up with...
Jimbob is more radical in his assertions. I mean, sometimes. I mean, that's not it. It's not necessarily a good thing. INRI.
Like a political mission. How do you do that? I don't actually know. The reality is I'm looking for new factorial mods so I can retire and say fuck all this shit. Because the reality is, and it's depressing, and I don't, and it's also hard because like I have to obviously, I'm being very, it sounds conceited, self-conceited or whatever when I say this, but like you need more people like me who are willing to stand.
You mean clones? That's why you have a clone war going on?
Stand tall on...
Stand tall? You can't say stand tall. I've seen you. I think this dude's like 5'4" or something. He's an actual goblin.
Liberal beliefs, but immediately disavow lunatics to the left.
Oh, lunatics on the left now? You're going to borrow that? You gonna take that one?
And I don't know why, but it just seems like nobody is able to do that. Gavin Newsom kind of did with some of the trans stuff.
This is the same argument as like the gays use. The based gays, which don't exist. They're all, well, I'm totally gay and I do really gay shit and it's disgusting. But also, I'm not like those other crazy lunatic gays. I draw a line with my degeneracy. And you're like, this is the same argument. They don't understand, or they do, and they're just liars. But Destiny here doesn't understand that the lunatics on the left are completely consistent and downstream, in effect, a symptom of whatever you think the non-lunatics on the left is. Same thing with James Lindsay and classical liberalism. He's not piecing it together that the worldview he's defending is the thing that permits, cultivates, grows. It is the soil for all of the retardation he's seeing. He just doesn't want to see it. That the classical liberal paradigm is the soil for the plants, for the weeds that we're seeing. He's like, no, it's not. You're just woke right.
But even he's like kind of a pussy about it. And when he started to get a ton of pushback, it feels like he was like waffling on it a little bit. But you have to have, oh, like Ezra Klein is a good example. That's a guy. You have to have somebody who's willing to come out and say, I disagree with Trump on almost everything, but this like socialist shit is fucking cringe. And we need to have real conversations about real policies that are going to make this country a better place. And nobody seems to be willing to do that. I don't know.
You don't even know. You can't, dude, you can't agree with even leftists you think you agree with on what a better place is. You have no idea what you're talking about. Is the world a better place with OnlyFans, Steven? Is it a better place? Is it a better place that, women from 20 years old to 35 years old, 10% of them have an OnlyFans account? Is it a better place where there's an uptick in Down syndrome pornography, Steven? You degenerate piece of garbage. We're trying to make it a better place. Well, everything I stand for actually ruins societies from the inside. It rots away. We didn't make the world a better place. You cannot make the world a better place. You are the infection, bro.
know why nobody in the center left is willing to fight to the left ever. It's just so fucking annoying.
Because you can't define it, just like you can't define what do they call January 6th? He couldn't define that either. The problem with you imbeciles is that you're all basically sort of like postmodernists. Like you refuse to define things, and you fight this fake war like you have a definition of better. You fight this fake war like you have a definition of feminism. But when I debated your little drone in a wig, she couldn't tell me what it was. It's empowerment. You can't tell me what that is.
It's so fucking annoying. But what is their political goal? On the far left, like the online agitator type people, they don't have a political goal because they're not practicing politics. They're doing something different.
Dude, you just contradicted yourself. You just criticized the right, and you said it's fine for you guys to be in group and have in-group preferences, but that's different than I have a problem when you make it politics, and now you're criticizing the left for not having the thing that you're criticizing the right for. You can't engage with these people and expect their brain to actually sort of facilitate a consistent through line. They don't think like their brains are fried.
And I think that's why, like for instance, like look at all the people, the Antifa protesters and the Gaza protesters or whatever for the war. Those people were only protesting basically Democrats and Democratic events and everything. And why? And then shitting on Democrats. But like why? Because you know they're not conservatives. But really, in my mind, it's so funny because
in your mind. We don't want to know what's in your mind, dude. Please don't even tell us what's in your mind. You have a literal teddy bear behind you on your piano.
People will say, like, the leftists are doing what I want us to do. That's the funny thing. When I say leftists, I mean socialist communists. I'll say something like, we need to excise these people from our camp. And then sometimes people will say, we can't afford to do that. We can't lose anybody. Like, we need everybody we can get. But then when you look at what they're doing.
Destiny has an LGBT. Yeah, he has a full AIDS lisp. It's like he went to a juice bar and they were like, "What do you want?" And he was like, "AIDS and meth on ice." And they're like, "Whoa, we don't get that order often." Suzanne Griffith, $5. A morally bankrupt man talking about making the world a better place. What is better? It's hilarious.
They're trying to excise us. Like, I think one of the big reasons why leftists, why socialists and ultra progressives, why they protest like Democrats almost exclusively is because people know they're not conservatives, but they want you to know that they're definitely not Democrats. They sure as fuck are not the evil liberals, the Democrats. There's something way different. And that separation, the differentiation is incredibly important to them. And I think that's what drives a lot of the protests and stuff, which again, isn't necessarily bad. It's just a different type of thing. It's not the politics that I think we should be practicing.
He has no idea what he's saying. He just has a bunch of retards watching him, and he's literally just making sounds with his mouth, hoping something sticks, to the wall. I mean, if I were him, I would be like, how do I get out of this? I would be thinking that too. Like, mentioning retiring. Yeah, you should, dude. You should just get out. Go do something else. That would be a win for everybody. $10. What do you think about the idea of Candace Owens being controlled opposition? I have recently seen a post that argues that, one reason being her organization, Blexit, is powered by Turning Point USA. I have no idea. I mean, at that stage of fame, you have constantly, like, once you reach a certain level of influence, you have endless people and organizations, whatever else that we don't even know about, coming after you and saying, hey, let's make a deal. They want to give you a certain framework to work in. And then maybe reward you with a lot of money, and then you go, oh, it's worth it. And they rely on people, it being worth it. Now, I don't know how you can prove any of that with Candace Owens. I wouldn't be surprised. Or at least early on it was the case. Maybe she got out of it. Maybe that's her whole exit plan, is like her being now pushed to this sort of extremist category being a whack job, a, tinfoil hat. Maybe she cut ties and they go, okay, well, if you cut ties and get out of breach the agreement or whatever, it would make sense that she would be sort of tarnished and have like a campaign against her to just completely undermine any credibility and so forth. So, so I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. I just don't know if that's the case now. Honest Diecast, $5. I'm convinced if Destiny bumps just one more line, he'll think straight.
But because it's not politics, they're doing something different.
It's not Candace Owens, it's Clandis Owens. Nice scribs. Thanks, Adolf.
What do you think of even non-political people being absorbed into the right, like XQC, who now call CNN libtard media? Well, again, I think that's just because you literally, besides me, actually, I shouldn't say me. The Bulwark people are good. Scott Galloway is good, and Kara Swisher, Ezra Klein, obviously. I think that these people do a good job, and they're getting more popular, which is good. We need more people like that, I think.
Which is good.
Wait, did I watch this on stream or did I watch this personally? Did you guys see the argument for why the best cabinet member is RFK?
RFK.
I will.
Now that guy seems to be under some duress. I have a worm in my brain. Didn't he go completely antithetical to his early anti-jibby-jibs? Didn't he just go full circle, like full 180 or whatever? Not full circle, full 180. He went from like, this is causing all sorts of problems. I think it may have been a jibby jab that put a worm in my brain. For those of you who don't know, I have a worm in my brain. And that's why I talk like this, because the worm has a gas pedal of when I can talk and a brake pedal when I can't. And he keeps pushing both pedals at the same time.